Deja, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And congratulations on being named a 2025 recipient of the YFP Gives Scholarship. We had over 60 highly qualified applicants for this year's scholarship, and I'm thrilled to have the chance to sit down with you and the other four winners to share your incredible stories and journeys with our listeners and with our community. So let's start. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, including where you go to pharmacy school and what led you to your interest in pursuing a career in pharmacy.
Sure. So I am going into my third year at USC Alfred E. Mann School of Pharmacy. I did my undergraduate studies at Oregon State, where I did chemical engineering. And during that time, I kind of figured out that I wanted to go into the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. And so that kind of led me into my journey to pharmacy school.
One of the things you shared, Deja, in your video submission, which I thought was really interesting, especially being a little bit earlier, although now you're transitioning into your third year of pharmacy school. You mentioned an interest you had. The way you put it was the intersection of science, policy, and patient care. Tell us more about that interest.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm kind of meshing that engineering background with my new pharmacy studies, and that's definitely a lot more clinical than the engineering aspect. But I'm trying to blend those two. One of the things I'm doing right now is I'm working on a scholarly project where I'm looking at continuous manufacturing for pharmaceuticals. So essentially, optimizing the manufacturing process for drugs. It allows for patients to have more access to medications at more reasonable prices because we have that optimization. So that's where I'm interested in pursuing in my career.
And tell us more about that interest in patient access and affordability. That was another theme that really came through in your video submission. And I love how you're applying the research to that area. Where does that interest and passion stem from?
So actually, while I was doing my undergraduate studies, I was in a healthcare desert. I had to travel at minimum 2 hours to find access to just a primary care physician. And that can be very limiting for patients on top of the cost to just access that type of care. So that's kind of where that patient care interest comes from. I'm interested in providing that accessibility, minimizing those costs for patients, and I think increasing the accessibility to drugs through manufacturing is just one aspect that I can contribute to that.
I love that passion. I mean, there are a lot of areas, as you know, in the country that have those deserts and have access and affordability. And I think sometimes we can forget that. I live in a larger metropolitan area. Healthcare access is all over, but there are many areas of the country where that's not the case. So I admire the work that you're doing there. One of the questions I'm guessing you get a lot, but I'd love to ask you and hear your thoughts, and no pressure as this may change over time as you explore these interests further. Where do you see yourself at this point in time going in terms of your career steps after you graduate from USC in a couple of years?
Yeah, so one thing I didn't anticipate when I applied to pharmacy school was all of the different avenues that I would have to explore just by pursuing a degree in one profession. I've definitely learned that there's a lot of aspects to pharmacy and you can go many different directions. Like I've said time and again, I'm interested in going into that manufacturing, supply chain industry role. But even right now, I'm an intern pharmacist at CVS, and I get that direct patient care aspect. And I'm realizing, I actually enjoy the clinical aspect of pharmacy as well. So in terms of where I see myself, I definitely do see myself continuing to pursue a career in manufacturing optimization, supply chain. But I don't want to limit myself at this point because I've learned that patient interaction that I've been able to get through my internships and my AB experiences, and hopefully through my API experiences, that I really enjoy that aspect and I don't want to leave that behind.
Yeah, that's great. And I think in some of the research that you're doing, when you're able to practice and get that experience through practice, it makes that research come to life as well as you can see some of the application or potential for application of that work. My last question for you is you look at the YFP Gives Scholarship. How do you think that this scholarship is going to be able to support you both in the near term and perhaps even in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, of course, anything helps. Pharmacy school is not
Absolutely.
not a cheap endeavor. So, in the short term, it's helping me get through this aspect of pharmacy school. But even in the future, federal loans come with their own expenses. They're creeping on
Hmm.
8% interest. So I think just over time, being able to not not have that burden of, you know, being strung to debt and being able to pursue
Hmm.
my own personal endeavors and financial independence and financial literacy. It definitely helps in that aspect. And I think overall that helps you focus more on your passion, the profession, why we
Hmm.
all get into this role.
I love that you made that connection, Deja, because I think that that is, such a critical aspect of when we talk about financial wellness and the connection of the profession of pharmacy, right? One of the goals that we have at YFP is how can we reduce that burden? How can we give people the tools and the resources, in this case, the scholarship that in part at least helps to reduce the financial burden so that, right, it's not handcuffing them in terms of their ability to be able to do their work in the profession or perhaps to pursue other opportunities if that's something that makes sense for them as well. So, Deja, again, congratulations on being a recipient of the scholarship. I really look forward to following your career journey that's ahead, and thanks for taking time to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Zipporah, welcome to the YFP Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
And congratulations on being a 2025 recipient of the YFP Gives Scholarship, as well as your recent graduation. So busy season, graduated, started residency. You got a lot going on in a short period of time.
It has been very busy. I feel like every day is just checking off a to-do list, but we're making our way through it.
Well, I'm excited to introduce our community to your career journey, your story, and we'll talk a little bit about the impact of the scholarship. But let's start. Tell us a little bit about your journey into pharmacy, where you went to pharmacy school, what led you into the profession, why you were interested in pursuing a degree in pharmacy, and then what you're doing now.
Okay. So I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, where I was attending the University of South Carolina. And I entered as pre-pharmacy after making the decision in high school that I wanted to become a pharmacist. My family has a healthcare background, my sister being a nurse and my mom working in healthcare management. But nobody had been a pharmacist. So I was looking through the list of healthcare professions and I said, I think I can do this. And so that freshman year at USC, I went and got a job at Publix doing retail pharmacy. And I really fell in love with the patient interaction. I fell in love with learning about all the medications and just how far you could really take the position. And then from there, I applied to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston and got accepted there and started out my journey in pharmacy school, recently graduating, as you mentioned, and doing some inpatient pharmacy work from there and also fell in love with that. And so now I am here in residency at the North Florida, South Georgia VA Medical Center in Gainesville, Florida, and really just looking forward to growing my career and seeing where this takes me.
So you and I had an opportunity to collaborate before when you were president of your SSHP chapter at MUSC. We collaborated on some financial wellness resources for members. And I really sensed at that time that you had a passion for personal finance, financial literacy, financial wellness, not only for yourself, but also for your peers, your peer students at the time. And so I'm curious, where does that passion and interest for personal finance come from, and why do you really believe that this is such an important topic?
I believe coming from a lower socioeconomic background, it was never really taught to me the importance of saving money or investing money or things like that until I got older and was off at college. And as a
Hmm.
first generation college student, you don't know anything about loans. I experienced my first refund check and I'm like, oh, I'm rich, but you have things to do with that refund check. So my sister started stressing the importance of savings and things like that. And so once I started to learn about the importance of things like that, and I got to pharmacy school and you have an even larger tuition and larger loans, I wanted to take some of the knowledge that I already had and grow upon that and see how I could apply that to graduate school and also make sure that my peers are also aware because we're
Mhm.
so deep into the books and getting into our career, we might forget about some of those things like finances that we still have to live throughout school. And we also have those finances after we graduate as well.
Yeah, it's been exciting to see. There's definitely a trend where more and more colleges are showing interest and bringing this topic to students. Sometimes that's through a organization such as what we collaborate with you guys on through SSHP. Sometimes it might be through like a dean seminar or a lunch and learn, or in some cases there might actually be like a course or an elective on this topic. So it's exciting to see. I think we have a long way to go, but it's exciting to see that there's
Yes.
more attention being drawn to financial wellness literacy. Yes, of course, all the clinical knowledge, all the things that we learn, very important, have to be there
Right.
for us to become a pharmacist. But this is also a really important life skill that we're going to be carrying with us. How do you feel like this scholarship tangibly is going to impact you as you're making this transition from graduating from pharmacy school, starting residency? It's a busy season of life. It's an expensive season of life. Typically, we've got board examinations and licensure, transitions, housing, all this stuff. Like, how do you tangibly feel like the scholarships can help?
So the scholarship has provided a great cushion for me. Just like you said, moving from South Carolina to Florida has definitely been an expense and not working throughout my clinical rotations. One of the things I've used the scholarship for is to pay for my board and licensure exams. It is
Mm.
very expensive after graduation. And so I was very grateful to receive the scholarship and be able to have one less thing to stress about. So covering NAPLEX, MPJE, being licensed and things like that. So I definitely am using it as a resource for that, and like I said, a little cushion to help me out through this move.
Yeah, my experience, often in that final year of pharmacy school, actually in many cases, tuition goes up in the final year, but then you also have a lot of expenses that come from just being on API rotations. And
Yes.
obviously, depending on if you're in the area, out of the area, that may be greater or, lesser, but transition, you're driving more, you're commuting more, a tire might be whatever might be the case, but there's expenses that go up. And then of course, if you're attending something like the ASHP mid-year clinical meeting, applying for residencies or fellowships, and you're earning resident income now, but it's better, right? Better than student
Right.
income, but a stepping stone, of course, to where you'll be in the future. I love to hear the tangible nature of that, and I think so valuable that there's something that specific in which the scholarship can be valuable for. Now, I didn't tell you this was coming, Zipporah, so this might embarrass you, but I
Okay.
wanted to read a snippet that came from one of your recommendations because I thought it so powerfully just pointed to the quality of you as an applicant and how deserving you are. And unfortunately, I wish we could have given more than 5 scholarships. We had over 60 applications, just a
Yeah.
really highly qualified group. But you and the group that were selected really did stand out. And this piece from that recommendation, I think, really highlights that. And that piece says Zipporah is so passionate about being an effective pharmacist who embodies altruism and professionalism. Her desire to improve herself, her patient's care, and the others around her is evident in all that she does. She's compassionate and innovative when she encounters problems. She is much deserving of this award. There was a lot more than that, but that was a little snippet that I pulled from that. And I hope you just have a moment to slow down and kind of recognize the accomplishment of not only the scholarship, but also in terms of, when you read something like that or you hear something like that, clearly the impact that you've had on those around you as well.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I definitely didn't know I was going to get to hear that. I'm truly just grateful for people like yourself and my village who have been able to pour into me so that I can pour back into my patients and the people that I encounter. So it feels good to hear that and to have that recognized. And like you said, to take a minute to soak that in after 4+ years of hard work.
Well, there will be a day where you'll be able to pay it forward, and I know that you will to the next generation as well. So again, congratulations, Zipporah, on being a recipient of the scholarship, and thanks for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Michaela, welcome to the show,
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
and congratulations on being one of the recipients of the 2025 YFP Gives Scholarship. Really looking forward to sharing your story, your journey with our community and our listeners. Let's start. If you could tell us a little bit more about your journey into pharmacy, what led you into the profession and where you're going to school now.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, like you said, my name is Michaela Martin-Worley. I am a rising pre-3 student at the University of Findlay College of Pharmacy in their distance education pathway program or online program. I currently reside in Bentonville, Arkansas, home of Walmart, for those of you that do not know. So how I originally got into pharmacy, so I've actually been in healthcare for a majority of my life. And, I like to say that this is my second career, if you will. I'm in my, mid to late 30s. I started pharmacy school in my mid 30s and will be finishing, right as I hit 40 years old. So, I have always had a passion for science and trying to make a tangible difference in people's lives. And so, I feel like pharmacy kind of combines those two passions of mine. And then again, like I said, I've been in the healthcare field since I graduated college. So, pharmacy was just, in the right frame of mind for me.
What was the first career path you had in the healthcare field?
Yeah, so I actually went to medical school. And so after that, I went into what I called healthcare, corporate healthcare America. So I started working for EMR companies
Okay.
in that regard. And I did that for about 8 years. And I feel like I needed a change. I'm not sure if my personality really matches well with healthcare corporate America. So my husband kind of said to me, well, sweetie, why don't you just go back to, patient care and what you really want to do and what's at your heart. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So what's next? What can I accomplish next? So, pharmacy is that profession that I chose. And, I don't want to say that I chose pharmacy. I chose people, and pharmacy is just, one of the ways in which I want to show up for people and for patients.
Yeah, and speaking of choosing people, one of the things that really stood out to me from your submission for the scholarship application was your involvement with for Humanity, and really your passion for serving people that are vulnerable populations.
Yes.
Tell us more about that service component and the work that you have been doing with Habitat for Humanity.
Yes. So I've actually been with Habitat for a long time. So I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and that's where my passion kind of really stemmed from. I used to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity, but we called it Habijax. When I moved up to Bentonville with my husband, I was, given this opportunity to become one of the board members for Habitat for Humanity in Northwest Arkansas. And I just would be a wonderful opportunity for me to give back in a different way and see a different angle of the business side of Habitat for Humanity and how we can affect, people's lives. And as a board member, giving them access to, certain things that they might not have, or, things that, they, often did not grow up with.
So, Michaela, I have a love-hate relationship with the question I'm going to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Okay.
And the question is, as a rising P3,
Yes.
what do you think is going to be the path for you upon graduation, or at least the initial steps, right? Especially as a second career, you've experienced it, that, hey, the next step you take probably won't be the final step, right? Things
Right.
evolve, things change. And the reason why I say I have a love-hate relationship with it is I think sometimes as students, there's so much pressure to answer that question that we can feel that and end up getting boxed in. But also it's a question that's fun to explore. It's worth exploring and starting to think about some of the passions, interests you have, especially as a second career, and how you can align those with the so many different pathways that one can go in pharmacy. So at this point in time, what are you thinking? What are you envisioning post-graduation?
Right. So in this point in time, I'm definitely, I feel like I'm very clinical minded. As I said, I went to medical school. So that's kind of where my comfort is at this point. So, I think the best thing for me would be to do a residency. and then go from there. I'm also very interested in healthcare leadership in that regard, and also just being. I found I've developed a newfound love for mentorship.
Mm.
It's become a passion of mine, especially since that now I am the lead of our distance education mentorship program. It's something that I kind of came up with, and then kind of got the ball rolling and took it on full time. And so now that I've seen that how you can impact your colleagues' lives a bit, and bounce ideas off of each other and whatnot, I feel like that's something that I'm also very passionate about as well. So it's kind of an amalgam of
Yeah.
different things. It's clinical, but then it's leading into healthcare leadership, maybe towards the latter part of my career, with that mentorship component associated.
Yeah, as you're talking, I see the intersection of some things coming together, right? You talked about this desire, this passion to get back to, patient care after being in more of a corporate organization type of model, but also those experiences have been valuable and have been
Right.
informative, I'm sure. And so you have that experience, that perspective to bring,
Right.
and then also this leadership mentorship piece. And so I'm seeing these three circles overlapping, and how do you begin to kind of bring these three together? And
Yes.
there's
Yes.
time to figure that out.
Yes.
No rush in doing so. Michaela, how do you see the scholarship being able to support you and being a help in this season while you're still in pharmacy school?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like in this season, given that after school I was in the workforce for 8 years, I building that first career,
Yeah.
building that up, and so now having gone back to pharmacy school, I'm not working. So my husband and I have now gone down to a one income household, and so very difficult. I didn't imagine that would ever happen. I
Yeah.
didn't imagine I would ever go back to school. So I think, getting this scholarship it's a wonderful opportunity, and will just help us towards those tuition bills that's coming our way, and it just won't stop. So that's how I see us using that. And
It's great to hear. I wanted to wrap up by sharing with you what one of your letter writers had to say about you. And I just think it's powerful and speaks to the quality of your application and obviously the impact that you're having on others. So that person said, Michaela exemplifies the highest standards of professionalism, integrity, and service, bringing warmth, intelligence, and purpose to every role she takes on. As she moves forward in her pharmacy career, there's no doubt that she will continue to lead, inspire, and make meaningful contributions to the profession and the communities that she serves. I think that's so affirming to what you just talked about as some of the interests and goals that you have.
absolutely.
And so I hope you hear that, because as you're talking and identifying with the interests that you have, some of the passions that you have, it's clear that others see that in you as well. So I wish you the best. I can't wait to follow your journey. And again, congratulations on receiving the scholarship.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
Well, congratulations on being a recipient of the 2025 YFP Gives Scholarship. Very deserving, and looking forward to the conversation and having you introduce yourself to our community, our listeners. Let's start with what led you into choosing a career in pharmacy?
Yeah, I think, first off, thank you so much for having me. In terms of my pharmacy journey, I think like many people, it started back when I was in high school with a family story. My grandmother at the time, she had underwent heart surgery, and it led to her being put on the medication warfarin, which as pharmacists we know can be a very complicated medication. My grandmother was from the Philippines, and English was not her first language. And so when we went to the appointment, put in a language barrier with all the complications with that medication. And at the time, I had no idea what pharmacists could do outside of, working in the community. And it really opened my eyes up to how closely pharmacists could help their patients one-on-one. And I just remember going through that appointment with my grandmother and her just really explaining everything from the medication, being patient with us. And even I, as a high schooler, really had an understanding of what was going on. And that really inspired me And then on top of that, my aunt, she's an ambulatory care pharmacist. So over the course of high school, when I was going into college trying to figure out what I wanted to do, she was a great resource for me. And I think I always knew that I wanted to be in ambulatory care, but throughout pharmacy school, I tried to explore other opportunities as well since PharmD is so diverse. And, I think ambulatory care always had my heart. And so that's why I pursued a PGY1 residency and ultimately a PGY2.
I think it's fascinating how those formative experiences can really influence us in our journey, right? Obviously, you had a family member, you mentioned your aunt going through pharmacy, your family situation that kind of uncovered the significance of the role of the pharmacist in medication management, right? We didn't have the terms necessarily at the time when we were learning these things, but you described a journey where you went from, hey, I really have no idea what a pharmacist can do or the capabilities of what they can do, to now, after graduating from Ohio State, go Bucks, and doing 2 years of residency at West Virginia, PGY1, PGY2, you're now going into a very specific area in endocrinology in ambulatory care. So tell us about that journey of going from, this broad interest of pharmacy to a more narrow interest in ambulatory care to a more narrow interest in, hey, I really want to work as a specialist in endocrinology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, throughout my pharmacy school, pharmacy advocacy was a very integral part of my passions. And I think showcasing the value that pharmacists can bring to the table is really what drove my passions throughout pharmacy school and even through residency. And I think ambulatory care is a great way to showcase what pharmacy does. And so I've done a lot of advocacy work and talking to, for example, West Virginia Medicaid to showcase, and a lot of my research has been around our benefit. And so I think that's really where my interest for ambulatory care came into play, because I wanted to showcase what pharmacists can do. We go through so much schooling that, I think the majority of the population doesn't realize all of the skill sets that we have coming out. And I think it's a passion of mine to continue to educate, those of what we can bring to the table. I think in terms of endocrinology, I think as in West Virginia, there's a large diabetic population. Cardiovascular disease is also very prominent there. And there's this space called cardiometabolic space that where, we can use GLP-1 medications to kind of tackle all of these disease states. And I think that our pharmacists are doing a really great job at managing these medications. And I was the first resident to help start the cardiometabolic clinic at WVU. And so we worked on an interprofessional team with a dietitian, weight management, endocrinology, and cardiology. So all the patients got to see all these providers in one visit. Mm-hmm. And being part of the beginning process of this really sparked my passion for these disease states. So in endocrinology, I like to touch everything from like thyroid to diabetes, and then having this crossover with cardiology and managing lipids, because everything is always interrelated some way.
It's always interrelated.
Exactly. Exactly.
Are you entering into a space that has an established pharmacy presence, or are you building that presence?
That's a great question. So there was a period of time where there was a pharmacist within the clinic, but about a year ago, that pharmacist left. And thankfully, I was able to get a job early on in my PGY2, but there hasn't been a pharmacist in that clinic in over a year. So I do think there is a lot of room for me to go in there and establish some services that the team there may need from a pharmacist.
It's a really fun experience. I had a little bit of that in my residency as well, and it was a really fun challenge. And I go back to a lot of those skills and experiences where you're almost trying to develop, on some level, almost like a small business inside of a clinic, right? You're trying to make a financial justification. There's obviously a piece where you need to be able to provide value, build those relationships, evaluate the work that you're doing. And there will be a future date where it's like, hey, when the pharmacist is not there, where's the pharmacist, right? But it takes time to kind of build all of that. And it's a way to stretch skills beyond the clinical skills. I think that clearly you have the clinical background and training to be able to come in, but a pharmacist embedding themselves in a clinic in a successful way is an integral member of the team. The clinical skills are kind of the table stakes. It's everything else that you really need to be built around it. So it's an exciting opportunity.
For sure. Yeah.
So as you finally are coming out of this long period, right, of undergrad and PharmD and PGY1 and PGY2, and certainly the learning's not going to end, but in terms of the formal education years, right, you've been in training like many new practitioners have been for a long period of time, and of course the 2 years of residency extend that a bit. But as you get ready to make this exciting transition from residency to new practitioner, with that comes a lot of challenges and opportunities financially. And so how do you really see the scholarship, the YFP Gives Scholarship, being at least in some small part a valuable piece as you make this transition from residency to new practitioner?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is knowing what I don't know. And you spend 10 years of education investing in yourself, investing into the career that you want to have. And you come out of that, and that does come at an opportunity cost of making a full salary. And so I think now that I am making pharmacist salary, which is a great salary, I have also invested all this time. And so I think from just a knowledge perspective, knowing what to do with this money, becoming a pharmacist early on in my career to hopefully catch me up after being over $2,000 in student loan debt, and knowing how to set myself up so I can be successful for the rest of my life is very important. So the knowledge that comes with YFP Plus in your book and the community of like-minded individuals. And then I think even the $1,000, for me, the first thing I did was put it in a high yield savings. And I was like, how can I
I love that.
how can I invest this money to make it? $1,000 is really great, and it definitely makes a dent. But I don't look at it as just like one monetary thing. It's how I'm investing in
Yeah.
myself for my future. And so I think looking forward to learning more and diving into the resources and really setting myself up for success.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, is the $1,000 going to move mountains? Of course it's not, right? But your mindset around that is powerful, that it's, hey, can I build some momentum here? Can I build some of the high yield savings? And then it gets you thinking about, well, what else? And how else can we optimize other parts of the financial plan? So really, when we look at the longevity of the financial plan and having success, it's about stacking these micro wins, over a long period of time. And I love the mindset that you have as you're making the transition. It's a really good one. I want to wrap up by reading to you a piece that came from one of your recommendations. And I think it's so powerful and really speaks to the quality of you as an applicant and ultimately as a recipient of the scholarship. So that person said, Julia exemplifies qualities that go beyond what is typically captured in a resume or application. Her intrinsic motivation, follow through, and visionary mindset set her apart. She doesn't wait for direction. She's actively seeking out opportunities to make meaningful contributions. Additionally, Julia demonstrates a rare blend of passion and pragmatism in her advocacy efforts. She played a key role in facilitating outreach, as you talked about just a few moments ago, to West Virginia Medicaid regarding pharmacy practice initiatives, an effort that has already led to a scheduled meeting and the potential for real impact. These actions, along with her consistent professionalism, accountability, and drive, speak to Julia's readiness to take full advantage of this opportunity. She is the kind of emerging leader who will not only benefit from the experience, but also amplify its value through action and influence. So Julia, those are great words. I hope you kind of treasure that, take a moment to reflect on that, and obviously to have a season of gratitude as you've worked hard to be at the point that you are, and certainly people that have come around you to help you as well. So thanks so much for coming on the show. And again, congratulations on being a recipient of the scholarship.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mildred, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations again on being named one of the 2025 YFP Gives Scholarship winners. Very deserving. And I look forward to sharing your journey, your story with our community and our listeners. Let's start with your career into pharmacy. And I know you also did some work in undergrad and a master's degree as well. So tell us about what ultimately led to your interest and passion and pursuit of the pharmacy degree.
Yeah, so for me, it was a long journey. As you said, I did a master's and undergrad and everything. But my family is from Ghana, so I'm Ghanaian American. So for me, I always wanted to go into the healthcare field, specifically to go back eventually and help people there. I didn't necessarily know that pharmacy was for me until I tried doing the different degrees and things like that. Originally, I thought I was going to become a physician, but after I did my master's in biomedical sciences at Rutgers University in New Jersey, I was introduced into pharma and seeing how I would be able to touch more people, in my opinion, by going into pharma and helping with medication access as opposed to being one physician and trying to see as many patients as
Hmm.
possible. So that's what drove me to pharmacy. And it just kind of worked out because I was never really into anatomy, physiology, and those kind of things that you need to be a physician. I'm more chemistry, math, that kind of based person.
Hmm.
So it just made sense in terms of my skill set and then also what I want to do. So that's what led me to pharmacy.
And eventually that path would lead you to the fellowship that you're currently doing. So tell us more about what that fellowship is, your area of focus, and some of the career plans you have afterwards.
Yeah, so my fellowship is at Ironwood Pharmaceuticals. They are based in Boston, but I work remotely from New Jersey, which is where I'm from. And the fellowship is in conjunction with Northeastern University. So for that fellowship, I'm in clinical development. So that's my functional area. I would say is mainly things clinical study design. So basically the development of the clinical study, the execution of it, making sure that everything is done correctly. And if things are not done correctly, whether we need to make up to the protocol or any changes, and then just document everything to make sure that everything is aligned with what we said we were going to do in terms of making sure that everything is in line with regulatory bodies as well. So I've been doing a lot of things with that, and the fellowship is 2 years. I'm currently at the beginning of my second year, so when I can finally go into the workforce. So the goal for me is to become a clinical scientist. I just really enjoy data analysis and just being able to bring the clinical skills I developed in pharmacy school into pharma. Because although I didn't see myself in a clinical setting like a hospital or
Hmm.
in retail or the traditional pharmacist roles, I do value the clinical experience we get in the PharmD program. So I think clinical development really allows you to bring that into pharma, especially when you're looking at the different patients and what's going on with them in the clinical trials in terms of their safety, efficacy, if there's other things that may be affecting how they're reacting to our medication. So that's a
Hmm.
little bit about the fellowship program that I'm currently doing.
Yeah, it's such a unique career trajectory. And I think really highlights well how the pharmacy degree can go to so many different areas.
Absolutely.
And you recognize and appreciate the clinical experiences you had, but also realize that you have interests in other areas that you can apply that to. One of the things, Mildred, that really came out in your scholarship submission was your focus and interest on improving and optimizing medication access in Ghana. Tell us more about that and what goals and aspirations you have in that area.
Yeah, so that's something I'm very passionate about. Like already smiling just hearing the question. So just as a kid, I would always go to Ghana. I even lived in Ghana for a couple of years, and one thing that's a big issue there is medication access. And even as I was a child, I did notice because often, unfortunately, you do hear stories about people unfortunately passing just because they weren't able to access certain medications for chronic complications like diabetes or hypertension, things that are easier for us to get here in the US. So that always made me think about going back there and helping with that. So over the years, I just tried to figure out which way would be best for me to be able to do that. So like I said, that's what led me to pharmacy. And then also in pharmacy school, I started looking into herbal supplements since that's a big thing over there, traditional medicine. And unfortunately, people use it in rural areas, but there isn't a large scale production of this
Mhm.
that's regulated in the country. So that's something that I became very interested in. So even on one of my trips to Ghana, I brought back a plant and I was actually playing around with it in the lab doing thin layer chromatography, trying to see if I can extract different compounds. Of course, it wasn't a long semester or a long project because I had to do it in just 2 semesters and people do this for like their PhDs.
Mhm.
So I was a little ambitious with that, but it was just an interesting exercise, just seeing the possibilities that are out there. So that's another thing that I'm really interested in when it comes to medication access, because even though maybe pricing may be an issue, I do feel like there is potential when it comes to these herbal supplements. There just needs to be education on it and a more fine-tuned way of figuring out what exactly these supplements are targeting so we
Mhm.
can really make it something that's great for the country and even in other countries in Africa as well.
Mildred, one of the things you mentioned is the long training period that you've been in: undergrad, master's degree, pharmacy degree, now 2 years of fellowship. And so you're starting to see some of the light at the end of the tunnel coming up here in life after this training period. And as you make this transition from your training years, from your fellowship to new practitioner, how do you see the scholarship helping, at least in some small part, as you make this important transition?
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate the scholarship, especially because of the different resources. So I feel like that's going to help me navigate, the student debt that I've accrued, like you said, the different degrees, and then also just how to financially plan accordingly so that I can achieve these big dreams that I have.
Mhm.
Because like you said, I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it is still difficult to see when, you have a lot of debt. So just being able to speak to people like you, Tim, is really helpful. Just allowing me to see that there is hope and there is a way to tackle the debt and then also build financial wellness as well, and then
Mhm.
also do any side projects that I aspire to do. So I think just that community as well as the different resources with financial planning and also seeing how you can be just more than a pharmacist and do other things to help build your financial wealth and well-being for yourself as well as your family. So I think that's the biggest thing from the scholarship. I feel like it's so much more than just the monetary amount that we receive. It's just that lifelong amount of resources that we can
Mm.
utilize way beyond our training, whether it be fellowship or whatever we're doing at the time.
Yeah, it's such a critical transition financially. I remember my transition from residency there's just so much going on. Typically
Hmm.
the gorilla in the room is student loans, right? And
Yeah.
you and I had a chance to talk about that 2 weeks
Hmm.
ago. And we're in obviously a very confusing time around student loans. Lots of changes that are coming our way. And when we ended that conversation, we said, hey, who knows what's going to change in the next couple of weeks as it relates to student loans?
Yeah.
And sure enough, there was yet another change, right? So
Yeah.
to your point about lifelong learning, this is a topic, certainly, when we look at financial wellness as a category, something that never ends. And sure,
Mhm.
you will work through your student loans. There will be a day when they're gone, but there will be other areas of the financial plan, certainly, that there are opportunities to grow and learn in as
Mhm.
well. So I love the mindset that you have around that in terms of the journey and the lifelong journey towards financial wellness, towards financial literacy. Well, Mildred, again, congratulations on the
Thank you.
scholarship, and thank you for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you. And it was really nice being able to share a little bit of my journey with everyone. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you too.